So when I say Lambrusco, what comes to mind? Does anything come to mind? Have you ever heard of Lambrusco? Maybe something fizzy and something sweet that your aunt drank in the 80s. You know, some old bottle of Mateus Rosé sitting in a thrift store, wondering what the hell's happened. Perhaps Riuniti on ice. I think that was a commercial from the mid 80s, if I remember correctly. So, I figured that if you had a vision of Lambrusco, that might be the vision that's kind of running through your head. But Lambrusco is one of these things that it's so much more than its sort of old, stodgy, cheap reputation. Today, we're going to dive into it. It's misunderstood. It's an Italian red sparkler, and we're going to give it the love that it deserves. So let's get going. So a little history on Lambrusco. Don't worry, it's going to be quick. But you guys say you want more history. So Lambrusco has been around like forever, right? We're talking since BC, before Christ. The name Lambrusco actually refers to a family of grape varieties that have been growing wild in the across the Emilia-Romagna region of northern Italy for centuries. If we fast forward to the 1970s, the 1980s, it sort of exploded onto the scene. And it exploded in popularity, but it wasn't really for the right reasons. Like a lot of things back then, it was something, that got mass marketed, and producers from overseas were just pumping out like just low quality versions of Lambrusco. It was sweet, it was low alcohol, it was fizzy, but it was more like a soda than an enjoyable wine. Now, since first impressions matter, right, that's what's been stuck in people's minds for a long time, and I think that's unfair. Now, while I think that's unfair, I don't think that Lambrusco will ever be the next hot thing in wine. Like sparkling reds, for some reason, they just don't captivate people. And even a few years ago, I think Lambrusco was having a moment, and people were in the wine business were talking about how it's going to all of a sudden sweep the nation, and that just didn't happen. So what actually is Lambrusco? First off, like I said, it's not one grape. It's a bunch, right? There are over like 60 related varieties. The main ones that you're going to see on labels and that you're going to want to know, Lambrusco di Sorbara, like this one, produces wines that are light, pale ruby in color, lots of cherry and floral notes, high acid. Think nice tart cherries and violets. It's kind of like a more of a rosé style wine, and it's easy to find as well. We've also got Lambrusco Grasparosa di Castelvetro. This will end up making the boldest and darkest wines. So like wines that are really dark, deep purple, and have a little tannic grip. So that's kind of a red wine lover's sparkling wine. Lambrusco Salamino. This is the most planted grape. Think in the middle of those prior two. Think middle of the road weight, great food wine, and just simply delicious. Last two, Lambrusco Maestri and Marani. They're less common. You're seeing some bottles now here and there though, but they're often used in blends. Most Lambrusco are made frizzante, right? Lightly sparkling, as you can kind of see. Most of them use the Charmat method, just like Prosecco. So the secondary fermentation, it takes place in a big tank. However, there are some producers that are going back to the traditional methods that include, the secondary fermentation taking place in the bottle. So similar to champagne. Now, I was fortunate enough to do a tasting while I lived in Washington, D.C., of the Paltrinieri wines with Alberto Paltrinieri, fourth generation owner of that estate. Now, that tasting, it was like 2 hours of just full education. I was blown away by the range of the wines. I'll be doing an episode of that's focused on that producer once I have a chance to secure the wines. But we tasted the whole range, the different grapes, and it was just eye-opening and fantastic. when I think of Lambrusco and I think of like a light sparkling red, I feel like this wine was literally made for food. So if you think about where the wine comes from, the Emilia-Romagna region of Italy, that's the home of Parmigiano Reggiano, Prosciutto di Parma, balsamic vinegar, mortadella if you like that stuff. Some people may not like the little fat pieces in their slices of cold cuts. But the acidity, the bubbles, it cuts through all that richness, and it's just perfect with like snacks and appetizers. Dry Lambrusco, you know, like this, plus a charcuterie board, it's just like, it's like it was made to go together. It also is fantastic with pizza and barbecue, and can even be okay with spicy dishes. So, you know, you don't just have to serve Lambrusco at like a perfect time, right? It's very versatile. So if you are ready to try some Lambrusco, here are some producers to look out for. Colletto Chiarli. So this is one of the oldest and most respected names. I've tried their Vecchia Modena. I've also heard good things about the Lambrusco del Fondatore. Cantina della Volta. This is a more refined champagne-like style. Elegant, complex. I had one of these with an Italian meal before, to open up an Italian meal, fantastic. And I'm seeing it on more shelves more recently. Paltrinieri, just like I mentioned, especially great if you want to explore the Lambrusco di Sorbara, but they have several other bottles that were all delicious. Another producer is Fondo Bozzole. They're small scale, vibrant, juicy wines, might be a little tough to find. And last but not least, Lini 910. So these guys have been around for a while, but they're very forward thinking, and their wines are just really balanced and friendly. So if you're new to Lambrusco, where do you start? You can try a Grasparosa, or I would say stick with the Sorbara. That's going to be your best wine to start with. And remember, if you see Secco on the label, it's not on this label, otherwise I'd show you, that just means dry. So it's not, these are not sweet wines, although some of them can be sweet. So let's taste this guy. So we're tasting the Emma Lambrusco di Sorbara from Cantina di Sorbara. All right. Now, this kind of had an interesting story, which is cool. So thanks to the generous support of the people from Nonatola, a small village within the district of Lambrusco di Sorbara, 107 boys and girls who were hunted and persecuted during World War II reached salvation and found a safe haven in Villa Emma, the mansion of Gino Friedman, founder of the winery in Nonatola in 1913, and a pioneer of modern cooperative agriculture in Italy. I love that story. So let's taste this wine. So this is a Lambrusco di Sorbara. So Sorbara is going to be the primary grape. And I find these wines just gorgeous, intoxicating. This has a cranberry vibe to it. Lots of cherry. That floral note that I was talking about is present. It just smells fun. Let's give it a taste. Oh, it's so good. There's a lovely acidity here, but it's subtle. The bubbles are there, but they're not overwhelming. They're not as persistent as you might see in a lot of sparkling wine, certainly in champagne. I tend to like that. At least when I have like a sparkling red, I don't like the bubbles to be very aggressive. Lambrusco, they're very, they're almost in the background more than anything else. This wine is, I could drink an entire bottle of this wine. It's just beautiful. I could also just look at the wine in the glass for days. Come on, how pretty is that color? When you look at this wine, be like, oh, that probably has it has some cherries and cranberries in it. It's just loaded with cherries and cranberries. That floral note is on the nose, not on the palate in the wine, But this wine is a fantastic one. If you wanted to start with Lambrusco, I'd encourage you to get, to grab a bottle of this one. Lambrusco di Sorbara from Cantina di Sorbara, the Emma. I will certainly be buying this one again. I guess to sum it up, right, Lambrusco it might have a reputation problem, right? But I think it's kind of in the middle of a revival story. Much like German Riesling, like I said earlier, like I don't think Lambrusco is going to sweep the nation and become like immensely popular. But the good stuff, right, like this stuff, is just bright, fizzy, refreshing, and I gave you all kinds of reasons why it's food friendly. Now, it's not champagne, it's not cava, it's not prosecco. Like, Lambrusco is its own thing, and I think that's the point. That's what makes it so cool. Now, if you've written it off before, or if you've never even heard of it, if you've written it off, give it another shot. If you've never heard of it, give it a shot. And then let me know in the comments if you found a bottle that's worth sharing. And if this video changed your mind about Lambrusco, even if it didn't, hit that like button, hit the subscribe button. It would just mean so much to me. And I'm, an 88.7% of you are watching but not subscribed, and it would just mean the world to me if you did. And I'm going to continue to make this show better and better and better. I'll see you soon, guys. Cheers. Hey, if you'd like more wine videos, wine knowledge, how to find values, and how to stock your cellar at home, then hit that subscribe button. It really would mean a lot to me. And we'd love to have you aboard.